Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Sunday Show and Tell. Apologies for missing a couple weeks. I had filmed a go-through of my high school portfolio that got me into Molly Carr in 1996, but I just kept talking. You know how I like to go off on tangents forever, and I had like 2 hours of footage. And the footage wasn't great because the portfolio's in a thing that has like shiny pages and there was glare. Anyways, it was a whole pain in the butt. So I couldn't manage to edit it into anything good. I'll have to refilm it, and I had no time. So here we are a couple weeks later, but instead of that, we are going to go through some little ceramic figurines I've made of my characters. So and I should say, these are ones I've made up at Ladysmith Arts in Jennifer O'Brien's hand-built ceramics class. I do have a few that I did in 2023? I think 2023 at Machosin International Summer School for the Arts. But those ones are still actually greenware because I don't have a kiln. And then I ran into an issue of not being able to get them fired. I have a friend who's going to fire them for me maybe this summer, probably in the fall. So they will eventually get painted and whatnot to look like this. But currently, they're not. So, and I was going to just do some busts of characters, but that would only be like 4 or 5. I thought, you know what, let's kind of go through some of the ceramics, and if that means I'm a little short on content next month, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So, the first one I want to talk about, this is Myles Marv. We've talked about Myles. Let me zoom in on his little face. We having lighting issues? I think we're having lighting issues. Okay, well, let me adjust some of the lights. Well, I muck with this. Yeah, that's better. We're going to see the spotlight, but I'll just hold it. So, this is not the first one I did, actually, now that I think of it. It's the first that's like a freestanding. And there's another project that I'll show you in a bit where we did like little bells from pinch pots. So I was going to do a little bell with his little legs hanging down, but then I made the pinch pot pretty small when you look inside, you know. So to get in and put a bar, put a bar across so I could tie a knot around to have his little legs dangle off a fishing line, well, that wasn't going to work. So then I made the legs as a separate little half of the jar. So he's actually a little jar. And it is Myles dressed up as Elvis, because Myles is like an Elvis impersonator. We can tell he's a 1970s Elvis impersonator. And the fact that it doesn't fit, it almost makes him look like he's got a little plumber's butt, huh? Which kind of works for Fat Elvis. So there you go. And this is definitely based on like Elvis's, I think this was like his Aloha I think officially the jumpsuit is called the American Eagle jumpsuit. And I like actually went to a website that had pictures of Elvis's jumpsuits to use as reference. So it's the American Eagle, sometimes called the Aloha suit because he wore it at some concert in Hawaii that was filmed. So, and Myles is wearing clown shoes. I don't think his feet are that big when you look at how little the rest of him is with his hands and whatnot. But, you know, we have to make allowances so that these things will actually stand. And otherwise, he's quite top-heavy. So there you go. There's my little Myles jar. Every so often, what I did this last year was I got this back. I think I did this last spring. So when I got it back, he sits on a little cabinet in my living room which happens to be where I tend to set up my nativity set. So I think somewhere on my Instagram there's like photos of Myles amongst the figurines of like the shepherd and whatnot, lining up to pay tribute to the baby Jesus. Myles, of course, would probably be asking the Lord for advice on how to make more money, which Myles doesn't really need. We'll get into Myles' backstory at some point. I'm actually going to be doing a video series kind of called Monday Meet and Greet, which actually I filmed the first one. It's not my character. It's like one of my characters. I'm sitting on my sofa talking. So if my voice sounds raspy, I've probably been talking way too friggin' long, as I am wont to do. So, Myles, first up. Speaking of pinch pots and whatnot, here, hang on. I've got a bunch of figures kind of in the way, blocking my the path of my little cord for this light. And then, of course, the fabric is propped up on a bit of a drawing board, so that also makes a problem. But with proper light. So we had the thing for, and I'm just going to dump them up. Oh, shit. Sorry. So we have a thing where we're making like little pinch pots to make like a triple dish. But I had the idea of making, originally it was going to be Myles. And if I can bring him closer, it's a little more in focus. Originally, he was going to be Myles, but as I was sculpting, I'm like, that looks more like Myles' dad, Larry. So when I painted him, Larry dyes his hair. It was supposed to be more orange, kind of like Bono dyes his hair orange. It's like kind of greenish. I was going to say brownish, but kind of more green than brown, but obviously, Larry obviously didn't tip his hairdresser very well that day. But as you could tell, I use this little dish of Larry Marv. By the way, Mouston's original used cars are, you need a new car, go on down to Crazy Larry's. He'll get you into a 1973 Ford Pinto, only 2 fires. Normally, $22,000, but for you, $21,000. Real good deal. Anyways, Larry here, I use him to store pen nibs. So I mentioned about a bell project. This is one I made of Ricky. Now, as you can kind of tell, oh hey, I can rest. It's nice to have boobs. You can rest the edge of your lighting on your boobing and the boobage, and then you have free hands. Anyways, so this little thing, this is a pinch pot. I added the ears. Ricky, of course, it looks freaking weird because that's not the shape of his face. And then, this is a little brain rattling around in his big empty skull. You can also see what I was talking about, putting that bar across, and then there's a little fishing line for the dangles. So you can see why the other one was too small to do that with, but this one I had done already with Ricky. Alright, so what I was originally going to do was just do character busts in this video and do the figurines another time. This is the first of the character busts. This is Ricky's boss, Big Mike. So Big Mike tends to wear Hawaiian shirts, and he's wearing a tank top. It's got mustard and ketchup stains on it. Big Mike doesn't care. You know why? Because he's the biggest record producer in all of Ratsville. Probably all of Ratland. And, producers get these things called producer points based on royalties. And he says Rolex. I know I didn't do a good job of drawing the Rolex, but trust me, it's a Rolex. Anyways, so Big Mike doesn't really care what he looks like, because the thing is, chicks only care about how fat a man's wallet is, according to Big Mike. Big Mike's already been divorced twice, in case you were wondering. Probably headed to divorce number 3. But that's also why he doesn't care if his tank top has ketchup and mustard stains on it. Because bimbos will be throwing themselves at Big Mike regardless, because of what he can do for their career, if he wants to. Anyways, he's a bit of a scumbag, as you can kind of tell already. But, you know, I guess you could say he's earned his scumbaggery. He thinks he has. So, there you go. And, of course, I learned a long time ago, if you make the tail stick out, it breaks off. So you kind of have to do this flat against the back sort of thing. After I get the Missa sculpts fired and painted and whatnot, I'll be able to show you an example of a case where somebody ended up with a stubby tail because I had it angled out and it got busted. So, yeah. Anyway, so there you go, Big Mike. And the way he was made is I wadded up some paper towel and started smoothing the clay on around that. And then I did something similar with a little ball of paper and then built his head around that. So that's how you do it. And of course, as you can see, it's a clear shot through so the air can escape. That'll become important in a moment when I show you another work. But before we go there, let's show a couple figures of Ricky. So we had this one assignment, which was to build a whale. And the whale's mouth is open. So you could use them as an incense burner or whatever. Naturally, I had the idea of Ricky riding the whale. Probably he's not actually riding a whale. Probably he's just hallucinating it. Ricky, he likes his mushrooms, you know. But there you have it. And his face looks a little weird. I find at this scale, their faces are really hard to do and get right. Even Myles Elvis is kind of screwed up in that way. But, you know, still fun to make. I mean, obviously, I'm not making these for sale. I'm making these for myself. They hang out all around my studio and also my living room, kind of as inspiration. So I'm not as concerned about facial accuracy because this isn't sale work. And I'll just sort of tip down as well so you can see. But yeah, so Ricky rides the whale. I mentioned shrooms. The face is really inaccurate on this one, I find. And let me... There. So Ricky is one with the mushroom that he has taken. So he imagines himself having shrunk down to mushroom size. And I even got, you know, Ricky wears Vans, so, you know, I've got the little detailing on the bottom of his shoe. His tail's wrapped around the base of the mushroom. And again, we've got, probably doesn't pick up in the camera, it's hard to tell, but so I did the two different cavities there, but I also poked a hole in between them to make sure the air could come through. And on the underside of the shroom, it's attached, but it's not super attached. So I made sure that there were gaps where air could get out. I mean, it smoothed a little bit on the inside, way down in there, which probably I can't quite get in focus. But anyways, so I made his body hollow so that wouldn't explode. His head, I think, in this case, is a solid ball of clay. But because I may have, and again, I can't tell. Actually, no. Getting the camera to go up there to be able to see probably isn't going to work, but there is a passage right up into the middle of his head. So, yeah, there's Ricky and the shroom. We will see in a moment why I keep mentioning about the head passages. Now, I haven't just done Ricky stuff. Here's Noah's kid, Ursula. And by the look on her face, somebody has asked her to do math. Not happy. She's done the exact same way the Big Mike was done. And what's not as obvious, it may not, you can see it, but I don't know if I can get it to show up in the camera. Something just went thump over there. But there are gaps under her ponytails. And the texturing in the ponytails, I didn't seal it off on purpose. So that there would be, little passageways for air to escape through her hair, to come out in the kiln. Because what you don't want is air bubbles to trap, because things will explode. And even here, there's not as big a hole as with Big Mike, but there's a gap there. So she was built the same way, with wadded up paper towels. Clearly I didn't do the greatest job of painting her hair, because there's some spots that don't have color, or it ran or whatever. But, and then the top of her head, I just kind of painted the outlines. So the idea is I had these layers that I did to get the texture in her hair, but I didn't, they're attached enough that they don't come off, but they're not, completely smoothed down where there could have been an air bubble trapped. So, Ursula. This is, Jeff. Jeff is the mix engineer who works at Big Mike's studio, so he's not actually Ricky B. Rat's boss like Big Mike is, but he's a bit. And actually, if you look carefully, I don't know how much this shows up, but there is a little divot at the back of his head, and I seem to recall sticking a pin tool up there to make sure there was an air hole to come out whistling, just in case. Now, again, the face hard to render at that scale, and he's supposed to look a lot more in shape, because Jeff does a lot of martial arts and stuff like that. But here he is, he's meditating. He's meditating on the meaning of cheese, by the looks of it. Very hard, I find, at this scale. I know there are ceramic artists who do incredibly detailed work at this scale, but me not so much. I need them a little bigger. But I'm happy with how the cheese wedge turned out. So, there you go, another little thing. I think I did that sculpture of Jeff after something else kind of failed. And now we've got another thing of Myles, a bust of Myles. He's wearing his little navy blue suit. He does not look impressed. Well, he's going to his actual work. He's not dressed up as Elvis, so he's kind of pissy. And well, Myles does have a fat little face. I probably could have contoured it a little better with the hair. I'm actually really happy with the sculpting of the hair. But there you go. Not as happy with how I clearly made the lapel. I don't know. It's hard to tell if it comes through in here, but I think you can see there's a line, because I made his lapel in 3 or 4 pieces, and I thought I made it, I thought I smoothed them together enough, but you can see a seam here and then on the back. But anyways, so Myles isn't too happy. His tailor did a bad job. His tailor did a terrible job. And Myles is not impressed, because he paid for far better quality tailoring than he received. So there we go. And again, same construction thing. You can see the hole into the head. It's going to be important in a minute. But before we get to why it's important, I'm going to show, since I'm showing some ceramic stuff, I'm going to show 2 other pieces that I did that are not figurines, but do involve my characters. And by the way, so far what we've seen is all made in clay called Laguna B-Mix. And so that comes out, I'm dropping things all over here, but at least I'm not dropping ceramic stuff. Other bits of paper and whatnot. Um, so B-Mix comes out that kind of slightly off-white, so when I have, like, say, Myles, his Elvis suit is actually white, and... That was a close call. Let me see if it shows up in here. Yeah, I think you can sort of see his chest is not, other than I drew in some chest hair, but his chest is the natural, and his ears and whatnot are the natural color of that clay, but then I painted, and this is all painted with underglaze, so I painted the suit with two or I think even 3 coats of white underglaze, so you can kind of see the color difference. Or at least even in the viewfinder, I can even see the color difference. It's subtle, but it's definitely apparent in person. So, 2 other things I did. Were supposed to be a clay called Speckled Buff. Now, and these are wall plaques. Are you seeing the speckles? I'm not. And also, what I've seen of Speckled Buff, it's not supposed to be this much darker than Laguna B-Mix. Let me grab... That's Ricky, so I'll grab Jeff. Because Jeff's not wearing a shirt, so we see Jeff's natural color of Laguna B-Mix. So this is kind of a white clay. That's supposed to be... That looks more tan, whereas Speckled Buff is supposed to be in between those two, and it's supposed to have speckles on it. It doesn't. So we figure, I mentioned this is, did I mention? I think I mentioned I'm taking Jenny O'Brien's hand-built ceramics classes up in Ladysmith. So Jenny thinks that the wrong clay was put in the wrong box at the store or whatever, although it's a box that said Speckled Buff on it, and she's the one who opened it, so I don't know why there's no speckles in the there's like maybe 1 or 2, but I've seen pictures where it was almost as speckled as the backdrop, just, like pinpoint black. Anyway, so it turned out more tan and not so much buff, and definitely no speckles, so... But I did this little hanging of Ricky B. Rat as the Green Man, because we were talking about, like, garden decorations. And, I mean, obviously Ricky, because he likes his substances. Presumably the green he would be thinking of would not be oak leaves. Although, Lord knows, Ricky would probably totally smoke oak leaves to see if anything happened. Anyways, he's not looking super impressed. And this is all kind of done with layers, so the sunglasses are thicker because they're a separate piece that's added on. If I show you the back is flat. Well, I mean, it's dented, but it's not, So, and there's a hole in there, so in theory I can hang this on a wall. And then the other one, which also has a hole, but probably too small to actually use, because if I tried to drive a nail through it, I'd probably hit the clay and break the whole thing. The other thing I was thinking of that people sometimes have decorative plaques in their gardens for is, like, the North Wind. So there's Noah Thorsen as the North Wind. His face, I did Noah second. These are both done the same day, though. But you can see Noah's got his cheekbones and his jaw and his kissy little lips. Well, Ricky has a pouty lip and nose and whatnot. But Noah's face turned out a lot better because he is the second one I did that night. So I had the process down. His hair also is very 3D. The hole is completely unusable. I might, put a thing of like... Actually, I'd probably put a wire for safety, like a thin wire, and then hang the wire on a nail. This one is definitely, I could put a nail through without too much risk. They won't go outside because they eventually get ruined outside with freeze thaw. So they'll hang inside somewhere. I haven't decided yet exactly. Anyways, I was playing around with doing the sculptural forms. I kind of like how these turned out, but... Oh yeah, skin color. Noah's Danish, because he's Noah Thorsen. He does like to go out and hang out at the pool a lot, so he probably tans. I don't know if he'd get that brown. He'd probably be more like me, going pink and pink and lobsterish in the sun, as opposed to actually getting a tan. But it's fiction. It doesn't matter. And again, no speckles. And that leaves one final piece. I've been talking about why you need to be careful with how you do the heads and whatnot. And there's a reason for that. It's because if you get it wrong, let's have a moment of silence for King Noah. So, yeah. Went to pick up my pieces last week when I was in for printmaking. And I was all excited because I'd made this little bust of Noah dressed up as King Noah. Could have sworn I did it properly. Well, yeah. Now, when we look at this, you can see sort of some layers within the head. So, I could have sworn I did this the proper way. I thought I did, I swear to God. But I can tell evidence-wise, you can see that gap underneath there, that I clearly didn't. And I can see when I look in here, there's a hole in the top of his shoulders. But I think what happened, if I'm reading the remains correctly, is I think instead of doing it the proper way, where you make a smaller ball of wadded up paper towels, stick that on top of the neck hole, and build the clay around it, you can, if you have a fresh piece of clay, i.e. one that's just come out of the pug mill, or just come out of the bag, which would have been through a pug mill at the manufacturer, there won't be any air bubbles, which means you could, in theory, do a solid head, right? It's risky still. And like the sculptures I did for Missa, which I'm not showing today, like I stabbed through the bottoms of them with pin tools to try and make sure if there were any air bubbles that the air had escape routes. But I do now remember that I wedged the head, which was a major fuck up, to be honest. Because there were obviously thin, flat air bubbles in between the layers as the wedging. Like, I had wedged it, but I obviously didn't push all the bubbles out. And maybe if I had, stuck the pin tool up underneath, it would have, it would have been fine, but obviously I screwed up. So the air in his little airhead expanded and blew his head open. And we do have a piece of the head. He was wearing a little crown. He's got a little hair. So sad. I'm going to put in a picture of what it looked like when it was painted before it was fired. It was so cute. But, I fucked up. Yeah. I can see on the inside layer of here, there's definitely where the clay was not adhered and actually mixed together. So I didn't wedge it properly. And I should have done it the proper way, which is the way Big Mike's head was done, which is a smaller ball of paper, because the paper is going to just incinerate in the kiln, right? And then the ash falls out the hole. And then wrapped layers of clay around the same way I did the body, But I didn't do that. So, let this be a lesson. If you're working in ceramics, don't do solid heads. You have to put a paper armature in there that will burn out, and that way also by default you have the hole so that you don't get an exploding head. Anyways, we have the summer off. We will be back in the fall, and one of the first things I'm going to do in the fall is I'm going to remake King Noah, but I'm going to do him correctly with with the non-solid head. Future Pyra here, in the middle of editing, I realized I made the unforgivable, horrible, horrible mistake of forgetting one of my sculpts. Worst of all, it's not one of the rats. It's Noah. Oh my god, I am so sorry, Noah. This is a little Rattle. And the reason why I forgot him was I was thinking of the bust, and then when I ran and got the different figurines, he's on a different desk. I forgot. He's got some, well, it is smudged underglaze paint that I didn't realize was on his face, but I frequently in the cartoons show him getting barfed on by his youngest daughter, baby Valerie, so we'll just say it's baby barf, and that was intentional. He's all sad looking. He's made out of a couple pinch pots. The seam line is kind of like that. You can see, because I talked about the importance of air holes for things to come out. There are some poked in random spots. That one looks to be filled with gauze. And his eyeballs, actually, I don't know if you can tell, but there's tiny pinholes there. There's like one in there, in his temple there. And that's because he's sealed up, so you don't want an explosion like we had with the very last, but also so the sound can come out. You look so sad. I can't believe you forgot me. Why could you forget me? How could anybody forget me? I'm gonna go cry and then get barfed on by the baby again. But at least the baby doesn't forget me. And, you know, his multi-dimensional hair color. But the way we did it was we did the 2 pinch pots, right? And then the rattles inside, we made little tiny clay balls. Well, not super tiny, but, you know, like that, you know, bigger than a pea, smaller than a marble. And each of those, when we put them in, we wrapped them in paper towel, like moist paper towel, so they would dry, but so they wouldn't stick to each other or to the outside. And then, of course, you go in the kiln, the paper burns off. By then, of course, I'd done the sculptural work, so he was all sealed up. They couldn't go anywhere. And then they get bisque fired. Everything else gets glazed and whatnot, and then but they can make the noise, and then the holes also help the noise escape. So I'm sorry, Noah. That was unforgivable. Yeah, unforgivable. Completely unforgivable. How could I do such a horrible thing? But anyways, there we go. Another sculptural piece that I made. And I'm quite certain that there's a couple I didn't bother to bring in. But not any of my characters. The ones that I haven't shown are like, we made like a couple little like bird statues and stuff like that, which are not my characters. So poor Noah, he's gonna sulk. He's just gonna sit there and sulk and feel very inadequate and pout and complain about how awful the cartoonist is. Anyways, there you go. I'm gonna splice this in with the rest of the video. And hopefully Noah will forgive me. And he says no. No forgiveness. Nope. Anyways.